All right, guys, here we go. The Swapcast with Grimerica and the Conspiracy Farm is going to start now. We're going to have Cernovich join us in a little bit to discuss his documentary, Hoax, which is an incredible film. I saw it late last night. Very, very good. Very well done. Exposing the bullshit that goes on with the mainstream media. And we've got a lot of other things to talk about also, guys, and welcome. Glad to see you.
Hey, thanks.
What's up, champ?
Jared,
what's up, Jared? What's up, Graham?
Hey, guys. Jeffrey, my host, all over North America, St. Louis, the Quad Cities, Canada.
Scandinavia. Yeah, thanks for having us on again, guys.
Epic
Thank
Swapcast.
Yeah.
It's a group effort.
I've been listening to your show, and you guys are knocking out of the park, man. Like, yeah, Jim Leon, too, which is one of my favorite guests, and you guys have been doing some, vaccine stuff and some fresh stuff with friends that you can talk to about anything. I mean, it's just great.
We got a debate, man. We got, I forget his name, Pat. You're going to have to help me out. He's the director of Vaxxed.
Del Bigtree of Vaxxed.
Del Bigtree coming on. We're going to have a pro versus con, or anti versus...
Our former Marine... retired Marine, George Pardos. George Pardos is stepping up. He's biting off a big chunk there, but that's his specialty is that type of science. So George is a very intelligent guy. So it should be an interesting debate on vaccines. And my take on vaccines is constitutionally based, as I've said. Look, I feel it's your choice as a parent, to have your kid vaccinated or not. I know people are going to go freak out about that, but look, that's a medical procedure being done on children. When you make that mandatory, that's getting a little sketchy in my mind. It's getting a little sketchy.
Yeah, I would tend to agree on that one. I do agree on that one. I just don't like the idea of mandating anything injectionable and injecting anything, and it all seems a little crazy to me, especially when you look at Big Pharma's record.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, everything's got a billion side effects, but vaccines are fine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the real thing. I mean, the information is just so so untrustworthy. Like I said in the podcast we had with Brittany, it's like the sugar study. They said, just cook those books, the tobacco study. I mean, it's just we don't really know what's in these things. I always kind of thought, and I have the thought process that, injecting kind of a foreign substance into the body to make the body kind of create a basic natural defense, I thought it was kind of normal and okay. But now with vaccines, you just don't know what the hell's in them. From some aerosol, they're breeding these things from aborted fetal tissue to monkeys. I mean, it's crazy what they're shooting up. Kids who just coming out of the womb.
Yeah, Darren, did you ever look at that expiry date thing on the MMR stuff? Was that real?
The one off the CDC site?
Yeah, was that actually off the CDC site? So you guys have heard all the media about mumps and measles and all that everywhere, and all
of course.
Somebody was digging up the dates for is it the expired contract of the MMR vaccine? Or
expiry date of the lot.
The expiry date of the lot. So it's almost like they had to, whip up sales a little bit. It was March 31st. Like yesterday was the expiry date on those vaccines.
Wow.
So that explains the fucking hype.
Well, I mean, in New York, man, they shut down certain counties. Like kids couldn't go, whatever it was. It was like out after a certain point in time, or just certain public areas kids couldn't go.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
That's kind of
they targeted the Jewish community. It's a trip because it's against their religion, and they targeted them. Kind of weird how history repeats itself. The Jewish community being targeted like that, and what are you going to do? You can't let them go out in public. What are you going to start putting stars on their fucking clothes again? You know what I mean? Singling them out. It's pretty crazy. I mean, the people that are for vaccines, look, I get it. You're freaking out on what I'm saying, but you have to think about what you're demanding of people who don't want to vaccinate. You're telling them that they have to by law. And so far, it hasn't happened nationwide, but there's been states, Oregon and other places, where they're passing these laws where these kids can't go to school. They can't, do all this other stuff. There's no more religious exemptions unless they get the vaccination. When the CDC statistics themselves say that the doctors in Oregon, only 50% are vaccinated, but they get a pass because that was a rider on the law that they took out. They voted that down that the doctors didn't have to follow that, but the children in school had to. So the doctors are going to be coming in contact with all these kids who have not been vaccinated, but the kids have to be vaccinated. That's a crock of shit, man.
Yeah.
It's all a
And
crock
we
of
even
shit.
said,
I mean,
it was, sorry.
what was that big debacle after the Second World War where we said we weren't going to do this kind of shit anymore? Like, I think it actually says in there that you can't give people anything they don't want. You can't give them medicine they don't want.
Well, and that's the thing, man. That's what we spoke about when we talked to Brittany. We are one outbreak away. I mean, they already are deeming these things, risks to public health. And so they can then do X, Y, Z, which, like Pat says, we can supersede the Constitution. Dangerous waters, man. And again, that probably is a beta test of what's going on in New York right now. Let something huge national happen.
That's what I was saying.
And they mandate it federally. It's to be smoke in the city.
Federally, yeah.
That's the that's just one of the few what we consider false flags that are being released. Look, I think I think there's a lot of stuff going on. I think that these Joe Biden and some other people being thrown under the bus of late are distractions from the fact that the Trump-Russia collusion report from Mueller was a big nothing burger.
It's what a week for that. What a week for Trump, eh? It's just like bang, Mueller report, nothing in there, total vindication. The next day, Avenatti gets arrested. It's just like something else happened too, I thought.
Well, Jesse Smollett got left off too. That was
something's going on there, I think.
Yeah.
You think?
Smollett will get hit with federal charges, dude. I think it gets tied to Kamala Harris and potentially Cory Booker for potentially, did they help orchestrate all that stuff?
Do you think it's all a distraction to distract from the Mueller thing? What do you think the actual fallout on the media is going to be out of this?
Well, I mean, they can always pick and choose on what they want to do stories on. I mean, I haven't really heard, and except for people's timeline feed, and this isn't really a Muslim Christian thing, but Muslims are going around Africa to slaughtering Christians in the hundreds of just thousands. And you just don't hear much about it over here. So there's always stories that can kind of pick and choose to talk about. It is interesting how the Jesse Smollett thing, after 16 felonies, fucking 16, when it's dropped, the news story, it's almost gone out of the news, which is very, very interesting. And then now, we can get into it. The murder or assassination, however you want to look at it, this rapper Nipsey Hussle out in California. Very, very interesting time wise. Even if legit. Well, I'm sorry. We can talk about that whenever we want to talk about it.
At least Chris Rock had the guts to make some jokes when they told him not to.
Right? That's Chris Rock, though. That's why I love my dude.
Did they tell him not to?
Yeah. Which is the worst thing you do to a comic. You can't talk about this. Like, so basically you're telling me to talk about it.
That's the worst thing you used to do to a comic. But it seems like nowadays that might be different. I would say there's a ton of comics out there today that if you just told them not to talk about something, they're like, okay.
Right. Well, I mean, because they,
some of them that don't have spines, right? But I've always been somebody who, we've got to tell the truth and got to talk the way we're going to talk, no matter what, to keep the First Amendment alive, and push that edge further back the other way, because you can't let them control the narrative and kill the First Amendment just based on fear of people losing their jobs. I mean, you just can't allow it to happen, and that's why we do what we do.
And that's why Cernovich's movie is so powerful. Even in the trailer, this goes back, and I implore everybody, and I say this often on the show, watch The Century of Self. It's a documentary. It's about 6 hours long, but it's amazing. It's basically about Edward Bernays and modern PR and marketing. The power of the media is so powerful. And like what Pat was saying, we all know they control not just the narrative, but then your perception of the narrative.
Bernays, the propaganda guy?
That Sinclair clip of like all those different news reporters from different parts of the country saying the same thing, but what they're saying is like, we're independent news. We're not about just basically saying this. It was just insane what they were saying, doing the very thing they were saying they weren't going to do. So the power of the media is just insane.
Yeah, and the problem is it's too late once they make up these fake news things or bring something out. It's too late to retract them. It's already done its damage. People, that's what people remember. It's too late.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's never everything counter to the official narrative is what we call whatever conspiracy theory or conjecture or, hypothetical. But I mean, in fact, when we look at, real history and how it plays out, their official stories are, the conspiracy theories. When what we talk about on our show, in your show, I mean, it's just fact. It's just alternative versions of history that some people accept, some people don't.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you remember back in 2012, everyone's favorite President Obama repealed part of the Smith-Muntz Act, which was an anti-propaganda law preventing the U.S. government's mammoth broadcasting arm from delivering programming to American audiences. But on July 2nd, that came silently to an end with the implementation of a new reform passed in January. The result, an unleashing of thousands of hours per week of government-funded radio and TV programs.
Wow. Hello, China.
And when you look back at that 7 years ago, there's a definite ramp up of the propaganda and the fake news. Like, it really did ramp up, it seems.
The thing is, I think it starts
or
before
really
that.
Nothing new exactly. There's nothing new under the sun. I mean, Operation Mockingbird has been in place for, since the end of World War II. And just think about Gulf of Tonkin. Think about the babies in incubators. Think about the sinking of the Maine and William Randolph-Hearst and the beginning of the Spanish-American War, the sinking of the Lusitania. I'm like, this shit's been going on forever.
Well, so you went so fast through that most people who would be new to these broadcasts would go.
Well, I mean, these are just each instances where they tried to get us into the war. The sinking of the Maine, I believe.
So you can slow it down and say, I'll do it because if I were a listener, I'd go, wait a minute, what did you just say?
I'm sorry. You're absolutely correct.
The Gulf of Tonkin, which was a false flag that started the Vietnam War, that got 1 million Vietnamese killed and over 50 American soldiers, servicemen killed. If so, just that, based on that alone, people think, how can you even say that the Vegas shooting potentially was a false flag event? And when I say false flag event, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. That means it was orchestrated to happen the way that it did happen. And people go, why would they butcher, 60 Americans at a country concert?
Right.
Well, there's things that went on behind the scenes that we have uncovered that would make it so. And if you don't think that they would kill 60,000 or 60 people at a country concert, well, you need to go back to the Gulf of Tonkin and realize that's the same government that killed 1 million Vietnamese and over 50,000 Americans in the Vietnamese War. So you 60 people is not a big deal.
And that's why, I'm not Alex Jones is Alex Jones. I was entertained by him for quite a while, but listening to him on Joe Rogan, I agreed when what he said about Sandy Hook. When you know about Operation Gladio, which is basically the government funding and arming terrorists, if you will, as communists to go start stuff in Europe to basically frown upon communism. And this happened with ISIS. This just happens throughout the world. So when you know there's historical precedents for these things, like we're talking about the Gulf of Tonkin, the babies in incubators during the first Persian Gulf War, et cetera, you have to just question everything. Weapons of mass destruction. Exactly. You would just be derelict to not question then everything. No, not everything is a conspiracy. And even going back to this Nipsey Hussle thing, it could have been some hood shit. It could have been some hood gang shit. But when you have videos of him saying, I messed with this dude, Sebi, who died. Michael Jackson messed with him. He died. Lisa Left Eye Lopez messed with him. He died. And he even says, I'm going to start this documentary. And if something happens to me, if they throw me off of a building, you guys better raise up. Or basically,
ride the bus, or he said, ride the bus or something like that. Or you better ride this out or something like that.
You guys better ride for me.
You gotta ride for me. Exactly. So, it's just...
Dr. Sebi, we need to explain again to the listeners, Dr. Sebi was, many people believe he was murdered, but he died in custody down in South America. But he was healing people. He claimed, we'll just say he claimed he was healing people of AIDS, of cancer, diabetes, all these different diseases. And he got sued, and the state of New York sued him, I believe, also.
He was charged with malpractice for operating without a license.
He had 77 witnesses come into the court who claimed, and they had court documentation of medical doctors, basically, and the proof that they had the diabetes, that they had the cancer, that they had, AIDS or HIV, and that they were cured. And after that, they couldn't do anything with it. And then it became public, which, as you said, Jeff, that's what Dr. Sebi wanted. He wanted to go to court so that he could prove he was doing what he was doing and make it public knowledge.
And then this goes back to the media creating a narrative. Nobody ever heard anything about this. He was in the state of New York court proving, not only was he not found guilty, he was proven through these dozens and dozens of witnesses that came forward with their medical records proving that he had reversed paralysis, blindness, cancer, AIDS, herpes, etc.
It's insane.
Yeah, and of course the media is, paid for by Big Pharma. They spend how much every year? $5 billion every year in advertising. I mean, of course they're not going to give any attention to any kind of alternative healing methods that actually work.
Well,
there's no money in curing. There's absolutely, it's like the crack area, the crack dealer. You got to keep them hooked.
There was just something with Didn't someone do a bunch of curing of cured a couple cases of HPV with non-invasive techniques like light, photon, something or other down in Mexico? And you just hear about that sort of on the off channels, or I think I seen it on RT or something like that.
Or Cuba recently has patented a cure for lung cancer. You kind of heard of that fleetingly, but you just don't really hear about it. Oh, those commies could never do that. Well, again, the media has such a powerful hold on how we perceive the world, and that's why I always say on the show we have to be very responsible on what goes into our brain and comes out of our mouth.
Right. Let's talk specifically with the Nipsey Hussle deal, where he took 5 to the body and 1 to the head. Right.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like a gang style hit. It basically involves spraying bullets everywhere, does it?
Well, and even from the video that I saw on TMZ, like you said, it was a very cloudy, you really couldn't, it was kind of about maybe 70 yards away, and all you really saw was a body drop and then a lot of people running, so you never really saw any muzzle flare or muzzle flash, you know what I mean? It was just kind of, a little bit of nothing, but I mean, it's just unfortunate, dude. But at the end of the day, I always ask the question, Key Bono, this guy was absolutely running stuff in this particular area. When I say running stuff, I mean legally. Not only did he buy a store, he was getting grief by the city and all this other shit for owning the store, as a black entrepreneur, and he bought the whole building. And so he and some other cats were just locking down the block, doing very community oriented stuff. And
that's the thing about him. I mean, he spoke a lot about educating young black youth on the goal is not to spend your money on cars and gold and all this other stuff. It's, dude, go out and buy some property, invest, so that
creating wealth.
And that's something that obviously was a strike against him with the system. But, and then we can go back and tie that to MK Ultra with the music and everything else of the 60s, 70s, which moved from into the crack in the 80s in the ghettos and all the other stuff. And as it moved forward into this new version of rap that is absolutely, it's bizarre to even listen to. I hear it every Friday night when I'm doing live shows, between fights, and I just go, is this an MK Ultra program too? Because this is some pretty fucked up music. Some of it is just off the wall. But so the thing is, though, is when he was working with Dr. Sebi to do this, or doing the documentary about Dr. Sebi, he's been very clear that he might die. He might be killed for doing that.
And I've even heard other interviews in the last 6 to 8 months people saying Nipsey needs to be protected, specifically because of this documentary. I just saw a video with Joey Buttons and then somebody else, I forget, where they were talking about who's going to protect him just because of the nature of the work that he's doing.
Well, I mean, do you feel like us talking about this subject matter as candidly as we are requires us to carry weapons? Now, I don't know. You guys probably can't carry weapons up in Canada. Yeah.
There's not a lot up here.
They might send a hit moose after you, is what you're saying.
The last time they tried, they sent a Mercedes
through the garage.
Benz SUV through the garage, and it missed the studio by 4 inches.
Are you for real?
Yes, it was a car chase. Allegedly, I think it was a car chase, but obviously there was a big with our community. There was a big thing up that was a hit trying to take us out.
Well, yeah, I woke up. Honestly, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I woke up 2 a.m. and there was just like fucking cops everywhere, cop lights everywhere. I could see car headlights in my garage through the open door. And I went to go outside, and the cop's like, "Get in the house!" And I'm just like, "Holy shit!" So finally, I waited a few minutes. And I was like, "Fuck it, I'm going out there." So I went out there, and yeah, sure enough, I went out there. This SUV's in my garage, and it's on top of my vehicles, and yeah, it was a big debacle, and the cops chased him in there. So,
was he okay? Was he okay afterwards?
Yeah, he was okay enough to keep running.
Right. Wow.
They got him, actually. I think he skipped court a bunch of times, but apparently I'm going to get my deductible back from him eventually.
Nice.
Wow.
Nice.
Hardcore.
But that was a lot of work, just getting everything sorted out through insurance and all that. But
this is why Graham sits on the exterior wall in the new studio, so that if a vehicle comes through the wall, I should be able to have time to get away out the back.
There you go.
He's the sacrificial lamb in the Grimerica.
But I will say
personally,
this. I don't think I would ever carry a weapon. I mean,
I will say this. I am a PAL. I do have my PAL, which is my personal acquisitions license for firearms.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
I won't say anything other than I have that.
I carry when I can. I'm on planes a lot, so there's times obviously I can't. But I carry as much as I can. You know, so just to make sure hot lead goes back the other direction. It's okay. You know, but you know what's interesting about this Nipsey Hussle deal, also on top of everything, is Nick Cannon is going to finish that documentary.
That's what I heard.
Nick Cannon is going to pick up the torch, dude. It's really interesting. He feels a lot of passion, and Jeff and I were talking about this. Nipsey Hussle, I think, just got turned into a martyr. We were about Jeff, and I think that this is something that wakes up a lot of people to this subject.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Well, and again, you know, somewhat part of
a lot of people in the urban cities and stuff like that may have not been wise to a lot of the stuff that's been going on that we talk about on our show. You know, are probably all aware now of a lot of this stuff with homeopathic doctors, and all it takes is that one subject, that one thing that opens up somebody's mind to the media doing what they do and the system doing what it does and not exposing the truth and what we're talking about every week. And so I think it's a really bad move if this was what we think it was, potentially murdering him for doing that documentary on Dr. Sebi. I think they made a horrible mistake.
And even if it wasn't that move, it's still going to be bringing the light to all this. I mean,
exactly.
And I was going to say, do you guys think, I was going to say the same thing. Do you guys think that all these little things that have been happening, I mean, the media has been burned numerous times. I mean, it almost feels like they're putting us on. Like it's so fake.
Right.
They're kind of eating their own right now. Do you think that it's only a matter of time before it does crumble? I mean, there is a whole bunch of people that are waking up to how bad it actually is.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the beauty about these kind of shows. You know what I mean? And we try to attract as large an audience as possible. And really, what we try to do is like try to transcend that right-left conversation because, you know, the matters that we're talking about do indeed transcend these tribes that they try to put us in. So, kind of even going back to the Hussle thing, and it's kind of part of this larger conversation. That's what you alluded to, Pat, is absolutely right. Whether it's some hood shit or it's a conspiracy, you can't put that toothpaste back into the bottle because now everybody, well, as I'm watching on YouTube, 85 to 90% of people saying this has to do with his affiliation with Dr. Sebi.
And we're talking from people from, you know, south side of LA.
From that area. But I am also seeing messages from people who knew him, who actually know the person. It was somebody he knew, and it was, you know, some hood shit. So, I mean, we'll see how it plays out. But still, like at the end of the day, Dr. Sebi's name is still resonating out there, and people who do, honestly, just because of all the things we're talking about, whether, you know, global politics and false flag attacks, et cetera, in the black community, this is just another cat who was trying to do right by black folks who's been taken out. Go back to Malcolm X, Dr. Martin King, et cetera, et cetera. So they're going to gravitate automatically towards the conspiracy of it because that's just kind of how history is kind of played out. Whether it's with Sebi or some hood shit, again, at the end of the day, he is a martyr now.
Well, and Dr. Sebi is trending on Twitter because of this.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of people being exposed to this stuff, man.
Well, and a lot of people don't even know. Like, I watched an interview with Sebi today. He was saying, you know, Randy Jackson, Michael Jackson's brother, brought me to him. So Michael was sick about whatever, and he said, I cured Michael, whatever. I can't say what it was because, you know, hip or whatever it is. And then, like I said, Lisa, and then Mike died, right? You know, and then there's all that speculation about how he died and the profile on that doctor, et cetera, et cetera. Lisa Left Eye Lopez goes and hangs out with him. She dies. You know, Sebi himself dies. Now the guy who's about to pick up the torch and basically recreate the court hearing, Nipsey Hussle, dies. So it's just, for most people, it's just kind of a pragmatic thought process of like, wow, something's up here. Even if there is nothing to it, there's, you know.
Nick Cannon might want to have some bodyguards.
Well, to take out Nick now would just be insane. Like, they did this with Nipsey, not necessarily on the low, but it was, you know, you can't be taking out folks back to back necessarily, because then it just reeks like a fart in a car that, all right, something's up.
You think so?
Very
yeah, but if the ultimatum is something worse than that, I mean, you can just hire hood rats to go shoot people.
Well, and again, you just never know who the Judases are in this industry, because to get to the top, you have to be compromised, just like politics. So could Sebi's work now be handed over to a dude that on paper he kind of looks like you can trust him, host this show, et cetera, but he's actually part of the other team? You just never know.
Right. So do we have Cernovich yet?
Is he ready? I can try calling him whenever.
Yeah, let's try and get him on.
Sir, no. Oh, where'd you go?
Okay, you guys keep talking.
And this falls another thing in line, and we've talked about this on the show a lot when we talked about it with Brittany. Dozens and dozens and dozens of holistic doctors are turning up dead over these last several years, including Dr. Sebi. Yeah. So, I mean, clearly there is this war on holistic medicine. Even just, we talked about on the show too, self-sufficiency in general. They need you to be dependent on the state for basically your subsistence, your very life. Yeah. You know, you collect rainwater. Oh, no, we can't let you do that. Really?
And the problem with all the censorship right now is who knows what's going to be censored. Like, maybe we won't be able to say Dr. Sebi on Twitter anymore. I mean, that's really what it seems like it's going to come to. I mean,
that's why I agree with Alex when he's like, look, man, when you set the precedence of saying that you can't say certain things in a land of the free, and the First Amendment is freedom of speech, there's that subtlety to the conversation of, yeah, you can say whatever you want, but there's consequences to it. And when you get on these social networking things, you agree to certain guidelines, and if you violate the guidelines, that's not violating your First Amendment right. Yeah. We just run a business.
Well, as far as the
guidelines, social, if you violate them.
Yeah, as far as social media, the Twitter, the Facebook.
So it's an interesting conversation to have. But
yeah, the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, that stuff. You know, that's how people communicate now. If you think about it, it has become Mont Bell, and can be, I think, eventually here. I would think once we get a reliable Congress in that can say, look, this is a utility. So now you because they can't deny me email access because I write something they don't like, because it's a utility. Yeah. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right. And they can't cut off my phone service because I say something that they don't like, because it's a utility. So eventually I think that it's going to have to be categorized that way. And, that's one of those moments where you go, all right, government's actually needed for something like this, because otherwise we get controlled by, the big corporate, interests. But will government actually pull the trigger on that?
Yeah, your Twitters, your YouTube. Well, this goes, hey, you can't come speak at my university because I don't. I mean, it becomes a really, really slippery slope when you start talking about restricting people's, freedom of speech.
Yeah, for anybody if you're a left-leaning person and you believe that people coming to colleges and speaking that you don't agree with is okay, that's really, or somebody on the right. Look,
right.
It doesn't matter if they're coming to speak about, as much as I detest Marxism and socialism, look, you got to give them freedom of speech. You can't deny them the right to come into an auditorium and speak to a bunch of people. It's madness to even consider doing that. But yet we're seeing riots. We're seeing, whether it's Soros-funded lunatics, lighting stuff on fire and turning cars over out in California at universities when Shapiro shows up, for God's sakes.
Yeah, you can't.
Or Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, you're just going to force it underground. I mean, this stuff, like, you know, I'm not for hate speech. I don't like hate speech, but free speech is more important. I mean, you have to be able to shine the light on the hate speech, and it will dim that, you know. I mean, it's otherwise it's just going to force this whole underground communication network that's just going to propagate the hate more. I mean, it really is just going to backfire.
And who gets to be the deciding factor, you know what I mean, or the deciding authority? It's like, and that's what's so crazy now. People on the left are very cool with restricting people's free speech when they don't like them. But what if it's somebody they've condoned it now, so you have to condone it later when it's somebody you do like that has to suffer the same consequences. But nobody wants to be, super morally, socially equitable about like that. You know, it's what they want. I don't like it, so go fuck yourself. Go fuck your free speech. It's like, no, dude, that's just not how it works.
Yeah. So and speaking of, the free speech stuff that's being attacked over, say, in Britain, where they're going after people, throwing people in jail for some of these Facebook posts, for some of the other stuff that's going on over there, but for exposing pedophile grooming gangs, for God's sakes. There's people being thrown in jail over in Britain, but I'm sitting here thinking, in Canada, you guys are being squelched by the Trudeau administration. It's incredible what I'm seeing up there.
Yeah, it's getting really bad. I mean, and there's uncovering a whole bunch of stuff. Some people think it's not gonna last anymore. It's gonna fall apart. I mean,
Trudeau's gonna be run out.
Yeah. Yeah, possibly. I mean, to be honest with you, I haven't followed it quite as much as Darren, but it's corrupt too, just like everything else. And people are, there's a free speech problem here too. I mean, there's people getting in trouble now for somebody just got a big fine for calling somebody a biological male, I think. Hey, Darren?
Yeah, someone just got fined like 50 grand or something.
50 grand, right? 55 grand. I mean, I don't know the whole context of it, and it was a political thing, and somebody called somebody a name basically, and I think there's a name for it there's a name for it. I
misgendering?
Heard it. Yeah, it's something even more than that. It's misgendering, and it's got something to do with history or something like. I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, it's beyond. I think it's beyond misgendering, but I mean, either way, it's like, it's not nice and it's not right, but
that being public, that being put in the papers and in the news and everything about that person being fined $50,000 intimidates everybody else. It gets the desired response that was intended to.
Yeah.
To squelch the free speech.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, it's still squelching free speech.
Yeah, and which is weird. Some people people's willingness to accept it when it's something that they're into or they believe in is just funny, because don't they realize the precedent that's being set? Like, if you a threat to freedom anywhere is a threat to freedom everywhere.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
That's slippery.
What's up with Cerno?
I sent you guys a message in the Twitter chats we got going.
Okay. Oh, Cerno, where art thou?
Darren, have you been paying attention to Canadian politics at all in this whole Trudeau?
I think Trudeau's in trouble. Actually, it looks like I've seen. I don't pay attention a lot, but it looks like Trudeau might be in trouble. I mean, there's even people saying that he might call for an early election, or he might resign, or I mean, I don't know about any of that stuff. But I mean, they seem to be the people who were really loving him a little while ago. Aren't loving him so much anymore.
So he's waiting in Skype.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Okay, tell him
Darren,
to
get your shit together.
Oh, snap.
Tell him to accept my invitation from Grimerica, and then I will add him.
Okay. I will do that.
What you talking about, Will?
What you talking about, Willis? Yeah, I don't know. Trudeau's inbox for resignation is overflowing. McCain's, SNC Lavalin. I mean, we got Global News going after him, The Star, McLean's.
Yeah, break down this Lavalin stuff.
Well, basically, they got caught. They got caught giving
bribing, kind of?
Gaddafi's kid like briefcases full of money, and the Gaddafis in Libya briefcases full of money to get huge state contracts. And they got
Really?
they got caught doing that. And I mean, I don't know all the details. People would have to check it out. But basically, this one MP, and she was the Attorney General, I think, too, or something like that. Wilson Raybould was getting like pressured, and she finally spoke out and was like, "No, I can't do this." And then it turns out that these SNC Lavalin guys took Gaddafi's kid, a dictator's kid, across Canada. Visiting hookers. They spent $30,000 on hookers for him, spent a year traveling across Canada, all expenses paid, staying at nice hotels, learning Canadian culture and English, and then sent him home all on SNC Lavalin, a dictator's kid. And then they got caught. They got caught handing out briefcases full of money to get high value government contracts in Libya.
And then she testified, I guess, about it, right? Was it an
Yes.
actual testify? And then, but she wasn't allowed to come back, where everybody else was allowed to come back and retestify. So there's a bunch of scandal around giving her fair shake to come back and talk about it.
Wow.
Sounds like America to me.
It's pretty close.
It sounds like a day in a.
Well, you guys
American
aren't paying
politics.
but you guys aren't quite as globalists, and you're not paying carbon taxes yet. I mean, you got France rioting in there for how many weeks in a row now? Like 4 months, maybe 3 or 4 months, and
Yeah, week after week, man.
yeah, and then we're getting stuck with the carbon taxes too, based on this global warming scam, and it's just brutal.
Arrest them.
He accepted it.
Yeah, Cerno in 5.
Yeah.
5 minutes or 5 seconds?
5 minutes. Well, actually, that'll give me 5 minutes. He said give him 5. So that'll give me a good time here to give a quick little breakdown here. So 2015, the RCMP charged SNC Lavalin and 2 subsidiaries with corruption and fraud for allegedly paying nearly $48 million to public officials in Libya between 2001 and 2011 to influence government decisions under the Muammar Gaddafi regime. The RCMP also charged the Montreal-based company, its construction division, and a subsidiary with fraud and corruption for allegedly defrauding Libyan organizations of about $130 million.
Whoa.
Oh,
May
I have to cheddar.
2015, the SNC Lavalin Chief Executive Officer Robert Card says the company would like to arrange a deferred prosecution agreement with Ottawa to avoid prosecution and developments that might jeopardize the company's work. 2016-2017, Federal Lobbyist Registry shows SNC Lavalin representatives registered more than 50 meetings with federal officials and parliamentarians, at which subjects include justice and law enforcement. September 2017, Trudeau government launches consultations on whether to introduce deferred prosecution agreements, also called remediation agreements, as an additional tool for prosecutors to address corporate crime. Such deals suspend criminal prosecution if the accused admits to facts that would support a conviction, pays a penalty, relinquishes any benefit gained from the wrongdoing, and cooperates with authorities. So, I mean, that line right there, the fact that we have 2 tiers of justice right there, like if I get caught bribing a cop, I'm fucked.
Dunzo.
But these guys, it's just like, okay, well, maybe you could just pay a fine, you know? If you guys just admit you did something wrong, you just pay a little fine, everything will be okay. February 2018, the budget includes amendments to the criminal code to allow mediation agreements, which are already used in Britain and the United States. So we add this to our fucking criminal code, or to allow this for these guys. Now, here's the other thing: is SNC Lavalin is based in Quebec, which holds a ton of parliamentary seats, which is what gets the Liberals constantly reelected. Quebec also gets $11 billion a year in equalization payments from all the other provinces in Canada, paid out mostly by Alberta and other countries.
Yeah, we get hosed in the deal.
We get hosed. We pay them $11 billion a year, and their daycare is $150 a month, and ours is $1,200.
What?
Welcome to some fucked up version of socialism.
but you know what that is?
Yeah.
You know what that is I mean, we'll take Quebec if you guys don't want it, because they supply a lot of energy to us.
Give us like Montana and Utah.
No.
And then we'll give you Quebec and BC.
Yeah, we can make a deal here, 100%. We can work something out.
We'll keep the French speakers in Montana and Utah. You guys just do your thing with no energy. Good luck with the candles. Good luck using candles.
What are you kidding? I'm in Alberta, baby. We got all the oil in the country.
Good point. Good point.
This sounds like you guys are brokering like the Louisiana Purchase, like brokering a deal of land you don't even own.
Yeah, pretty much. So anyway, fast forward to now, and we got, where is she here now? Here we go. January 14th, Jody Wilson-Raybould is shuffled from her position as Minister of Justice and Attorney General to Minister of Veterans Affairs and Associate Minister of National Defense, which I think was like a 30-point drop in her on like the table of where you on the hierarchy. She dropped like 30 points as soon as it turned out she wasn't going to go.
So she got dropped because she didn't want to continue that investigation or something like that?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So anyway, fast forward to now, and it's like it just heated up again the other day because I think she released some tape or something like that.
Yeah, she recorded secret recording.
I mean, it's kind of just what we needed to get this guy out of here because he does seem to have a lot of the country hypnotized. You know, it's like this guy can do whatever the fuck he wants as long as he looks good and takes a lot of selfies. It's unbelievable. He just gives away our money
all day.
And he's made some comments about the East, like basically Quebec is Canada.
Yeah,
Quebec is Canada, and the West means nothing. Like the videos that are of him years ago talking bad about the West, it just makes you think, what the fuck is going on?
You know
here?
what you got to do?
Prime Minister
is you just got to Google Trudeau Ethics Commission, and there'll be a bunch of clips on YouTube, and it'll be like the one time he was in Parliament. I think he got asked 18 times in a row how many times he's visited the Ethics Commission. And he's like, oh, I'm happy to visit with the Ethics Commission whenever they ask me. And the next person's like, okay, well, how many times? Oh, I'm happy to visit with them as many times as they ask me. He gets asked this 18 times in a row, and he won't answer. Yeah, never. And there's like video after video after video of this guy just giving this generic answer. I mean, look what happened when someone called him out in a press conference on paying for Buddy's hookers. He's like, you took this guy across the country, they paid for his hookers, and now you guys are going to just let him off. What do you think about all that? And he's like, we're here to defend the rights of the workers, and we're going to stand up for Canadian workers every chance we get.
You're like, what the fuck? It wasn't even about that.
Okay, I got to go at Cerno.
Okay, we got Adam here.
Dude, how did you guys get duped into voting for him?
Well, because it's all back east, right? Whatever back east wants, they get. They're all the votes, right? It's
so you're saying the Quebecois are at fault.
Yeah, and Ontario too, right?
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. I'm gonna have to have a conversation with my wife about that. Her family's she's French Canadian.
Yeah, I'm from Montreal. I was born in Montreal. We moved out out west in the late 70s. Yeah.
Do you speak French?
I used to when I was a kid, but when all the signs started changing to French on our road signs, we moved out west.
Mike Cernovich.
What's up, gentlemen?
Hey man, thanks for joining us, buddy. Sorry for the mix up there.
All good, all good.
Good stuff. So turn your level on your mic down just a tad. We are ready to rock and roll. We got Mike Cernovich, folks. I'm pretty damn happy about that. Little reunion.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, you've been a busy man. You got your new documentary out, Hoax. We want to talk about that. Watched it last night. The cinematography, everything. Incredible stuff.
Yeah, I couldn't. I'm going to turn my mic down. Yeah, I couldn't be happier, actually. It was really unbelievably good.
And the Jordan Peterson interview, excellent.
Yeah, the guys blew me away, dude. Everybody blew me away on this.
You have been targeted by the media on numerous occasions, and you decided to turn the table with this documentary. Tell us a little bit about how it all came together, buddy.
Yeah, I like to do. Like anything else, you want to challenge yourself, right? You feel like you're really pushing yourself. And I just always wanted to do a great film, an amazing film. I did a film a couple of years ago that wasn't what it should be, and I felt like I left it on the field. Like I could have had something great, and it didn't turn out great. And I was obsessed with finding the right project and the right team to do a great film. And then I said, well, what better project than a film on fake news?
That's so. when we go through it in the beginning, just the trailer alone is incredible. I mean, anybody that sees the trailer and doesn't buy it, I don't know how they don't buy it, because it's so compelling. And we have been talking on our shows, our podcasts, and as you as well, online constantly, pointing out how many basically falsifications or just not talking about the truth at all, just leaving it out completely, that we've sat there and witnessed. I could go through the list of hundreds, if not thousands, that we've talked about, and you put it together concisely in this documentary. And I tell you, man, it's finally, for anybody out there, it's a perfect film. For anyone who doubts what we say, just sit down and watch the documentary Hoaxed for you to have a light bulb go on in your head. I think it was that well done for people that would be a denier. It's hard to deny after that.
Thank you. And we made it to have crossover appeal too. So if you're a lefty, a conservative, or whatever you are, you'll find something good in there. And I did the opposite of most people do in their films. Like I interviewed with someone from Black Lives Matter, and we shot him good. We made him look good. We let him present his best argument. And a lot of people who, like me or whatever, like Trump or more conservative, some of them didn't really like that part. And I'm like, well, good. You always cry that the snowflakes won't let you come onto your college campuses. So don't cry to me if I put somebody with a different point of view in a film, right? You got to have it both ways.
And it was nice because you pointed something out to him. You can elaborate on that. You can point out to him, and he's like, dude, I got like 4,000 people on my Facebook page, and I've never seen this story.
Yeah, exactly. There was a major, I don't want to spoil the moment too much other than to say there was a major news event that the media didn't cover. And there's a reason that the media didn't cover that. And that's because we see a pattern, which is if there's like the Covington Gate story is a perfect example. Who cares? Let's just say worst case, some 15-year-old kids heckled some 70-year-old Native American guy, right? As we know, that didn't happen. Why is that worthy of the Washington Post and the New York Times? That isn't real news. But if they can use that as a proxy war against Trump, suddenly that's a huge story. But if a Bernie supporter kills, and remember this, the Steve Scalise shooting, that lasted about 4 hours and the media wanted to go away because that guy was a Democrat. He tried to murder a bunch of Republicans. So the media's like, we'll kind of cover it so they can't say we didn't. And then they move on really, really quickly and there's no follow-up. And that's the pattern. If the media only cares about a story, if they can use it as a bludgeon to hit Trump or conservatives or Republicans with, but if there's actually something worse being done by the left, you won't hear anything about it in the mainstream. For example, in Philadelphia, 4 members of Antifa were arrested and charged with hate crimes because they attacked, believe it or not, Latino Marines. This is all true. People don't believe it when I tell them that these Marines were walking down the street and these Antifa people said, "Are you proud boys?" And they were like, "Well, Marines, yeah, we're proud. We're proud." And then they were attacked, and they're like, what is going on? Well, Antifa thought they were Proud Boys, the men's group or the fraternal group, whatever you want to call it. And then one of the Marines was Latino, so they were saying anti-Latino slurs on this Marine. Shouldn't that be a big story? Members of the Marines were attacked by a far left-wing domestic terrorist group. Nothing from the media, though. All these people say support the troops. We love the troops. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, here you go. Why don't you support the troops? Why don't you report on it? Nothing from the mainstream media. It's just some little blurb in the alternative weekly publication. And that's the world we live in. And that's why people don't trust the media, because it isn't just what they report is fake, which most of it is fake, is what they're not reporting. They're not reporting true stories.
Right. We were just talking about the number of Christians being killed in Africa right now. And that is an absolute non-story with the media because it does not suit their narrative.
Yeah, that's another great point, which is Christian. Even put it differently, let's just play the media's games, right? Okay, we know the media doesn't care about Christians. They claim to care about Muslims. Okay, there are 1 million Muslims being kept in basically internment camps, whatever you want to call them, concentration camps in China. 1 million Muslims. Yeah. Nothing from the media. Why? Well, because China invests heavily in American media. They buy a lot of ads in the media. They're supporting CNN, propping up all these fake news outlets. So It's like, okay, you care so much about Muslims. Why don't you report? Why isn't this a huge story? Why aren't they saying, President Trump, how can you do deals with China when China's keeping Muslims in internment camps? And they don't care about anything, dude. All they care about, here's all the media cares about: global destruction, murder, bombing people, destroying the Middle East regime. They're a sociopathic death cult. People go, well, that sounds awfully severe. Show me a war the media opposed. Show me one. Just show me. You can't do it. That's what they are. It is a sociopathic death cult. And I would love for them to prove us wrong, but they want to go us into Syria. They want us to go to Venezuela. They claim to really care about Muslims, at least when they can advocate for gun control and social media censorship, but they don't want to talk about the 1 million Muslims in concentration camps in China. So it's all a ruse, dude. And nobody smart is actually falling for this nonsense anymore.
Is it all ratings? Is it all rating push for each of these companies, or is it from Defense Department to push certain narratives about regime change here or there?
I don't think it's all ratings, because you could get great ratings talking. I mean, Fox News is the #1 most watched cable channel, right? So you could get a lot of ratings by reporting on the truth about violence against Trump supporters. There's a saying, if it bleeds, it leads. Well, hey, I have blood for you every day happening to Trump supporters, blood in the streets, man. People almost getting killed all the time, women getting attacked, Marines being attacked by Antifa. So if it were really about ratings, they would say, CNN would say, stay tuned. We're about to show you a far left-wing domestic terrorist group, Antifa, commit a racist hate crime against the Latino Marine. That's ratings right there, bro. That is. So why don't they report on that? Well, because they support the left-wing terrorist groups. They're all in it together. It's amazing. CNN, they love Antifa. You can see them. Don Lemon is praising Antifa.
I see the goal. I mean, and this is not an extreme view. This is a common view. I've talked to an awful lot of people across this country that the media wants an implosion. They want left and right to clash. They want guns taken away. They want people being shot in the streets so that there can be martial law. That's how they get the guns ultimately, and then they can do whatever they want when they get into power.
Well, and they think that. The problem is they think here's the difference, I guess, between me and the fake news media, and probably Pat, you other guys is, you think you're going to win every fight, but as you learn, you never know how hard the other guy can hit, right? Until it's too late. So the media, they just assume if we disarm all these, Hicks and flyover state, then we're going to be in charge. But how do they know, right? Maybe they end up in the gulags just like everyone else. So they've never actually had any real adversity in their lives to realize, like, I'm more libertarian just because I don't trust me with power. I don't trust anybody with power.
Yeah.
But in their world, they think we'll have all the power and we'll rule. Maybe not, though. Maybe somebody more extreme and more radical and more sociopathic than the media will rule them, and then that'll be a big backfire.
Where do you think the pharmaceutical?
Well, yeah, I mean, you think about that. They've got to be thanking God that a Pinochet hasn't come into power, giving free helicopter rides to communists, right?
Well, that's the issue, is there'll always be a backlash,
right?
And that's what I warn people against, is that if the left takes over, they keep abusing people like they are, and they keep supporting these sociopathic death cults like Antifa and these terror groups. What do they think that ends? It never ends that way. There's always a backlash, and the backlash is usually terrible. So if I were a media weenie, so to speak, I would be thinking, oh man, there might be somebody like Bolsonaro coming up if I'm not careful. I have a good gig. I'm making a lot of money. I'm, selling Vioxx and opioids to the masses for my pharmaceutical owners. Maybe I ought to keep cashing these big checks like they do in the media and not try to get this backlash, but they don't even see it that way because they're not really that smart, and they can't think more than one move ahead.
How much much pull did you find the pharmaceutical companies have doing a deep dive? Because I mean, I've looked into that. We've looked into that a few times here in Grimerica, and there's 6 now 5 companies that are controlling all the major networks. And as far as you can tell, it seems like most of their support is coming all from pharmaceutical companies. Is there obviously a lot of it's ideological based, but it seems like there's a lot of money dumping in from pharmaceuticals. Do you think any of that is is any of that dirty money for pushing this political slant, or is that just their actual political beliefs? I mean, you have Smith-Muntz repeal in 2012 that obviously is putting an angle on everything. I mean, what's driving it? And do you think that the Mueller report and what these networks have been saying for the last couple of years is going to have any effect on that?
Well, they absolutely are owned by Big Pharma. One thing I like to tell people is, do you know, I'm not being rude, I'm reading right now that as many as 500 people a year die from acetaminophen or Tylenol overdoses. How many people know? Why is that? And if you tell people that's like, that isn't true. No, you can go find this data. Why is that not? Tylenol is actually terrible stuff. And what happens is people have a hangover, and because their liver is already overworking from clearing the alcohol out, Tylenol is actually very toxic for the liver, even if you have a very healthy liver. Why doesn't everybody know that? Well, who advertises, right? If you're CNN, are you going to do a special report on how dangerous Tylenol is and why actually there's really no reason to take Tylenol as opposed to, except in very, very, very rare circumstances, there's no reason to take Tylenol instead of ibuprofen. There isn't to do it. It's very liver toxic. So why don't more people know that? But then I think all of us are, in our late 30s, early 40s-ish. We all remember ephedrine, when you could get good ephedra and Ultimate Orange and the pre-workouts. One guy claimed he had a heart attack, even though he was like super obese and took a whole bottle. And it was banned, right? You couldn't get ephedra. You couldn't get Rip Fuel, right? You remember you got Twin Lab stuff?
Rip Fuel.
Like nothing like it, right? And one guy who was just way out of shape anyway, shouldn't be taking it, has a heart attack, maybe wasn't even due to ephedra, because he was out of shape, but they got to ban ephedra. Okay, well, 500 people a year are dying from acetaminophen. Why then is there no call to ban Tylenol? Why is there no media report coverage on Tylenol stuff? Well, them ad dollars, right? It's all about big ad dollars for pharmaceutical companies.
Do you think it's unraveling to the point, like since your documentary came out as well, it's just been ramping up, and there's one big story after another that they're getting sort of raked over the coals. Do you think it's unraveling to the point where it's going to peak at some point here?
Yeah, I've been looking at age averages. The only people who trust CNN are like really old people now. That's why there was this big push to censor podcasts like yours. They were banning documentaries on vaccination, right? Yeah. I will, for example, I tweeted out the other day, or not the other day, like 2 months ago. I said, I'm watching the movie Vax. Has anyone seen it? And it was like an army of paid trolls attacked me. Oh, you're anti-vax. And it's like, what are you talking about? I watch documentaries all the time. I haven't even watched it. Even if you watch a documentary on vaccines, they're coming for you. They're going to, they'll try to ban you. I was talking to one guy, he had a podcast and he said that it got shadow banned. It used to be a top 100 podcast on iTunes. And then he had Del Bigtree on it to talk about vaccinations.
Holy shit.
And they didn't even go full anti-vax. They just went full on like, no, here's some very straightforward stuff. So his podcast wasn't banned, but he was shadow banned.
So listen to this.
In the top 100.
We've been consistently in the top 20 philosophy podcasts in the US iTunes store for the last year and a half. Since we had Del Bigtree on, I can't find us in the top 200 philosophy podcasts, and there's shows on there that have 3 reviews that haven't released an episode in fucking 3 months. And Grimerica's just gone since we had, and you know what? I'll have Del Bigtree on again. But just so you guys know, I know you guys.
Are you prepared to go? We got him on next week doing a pro and anti-vax.
Yeah, Del Bigtree is going to be debate with a pro-vaxxer. So we're given equal rights and equal voice to both sides of this argument. And I would hope, look, if the pro-vaccine people and the anti-vaccine people want to hear the truth out of 2 educated men on the subject, it should be available to everyone. And if it's not, then what are they afraid of? They're afraid of the truth. They're afraid of the truth with every subject that we bring up. And that's where you got to scream louder, man. You got to point it out, and you got to say, look, people better wake up and start listening and fighting for the truth, or we got some big problems on our hands.
Well, and that's funny too.
For our
you
show
mentioned
to be even further shadow banned, Pat. Sorry, Mike.
Well, no, and that's funny you mentioned that. That was what you told me was exactly what this other podcaster said. He goes, there's just mom and pops now overtook me. He's like, there's just some mom and pop podcast, 8 ratings. And this guy's got thousands of ratings, been on forever. He was always top 100 or top 125. Now he can't even find it. And that's how it's going, where if you even have Del Bigtree on your podcast, there's some kind of monitor, some kind of algorithm, and boom, you're deplatformed. So there's a lot of talk about conservative speech being censored, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, that's true, but they're actually going after the people who are for informed consent about vaccines. They're going after them harder than they're going after conservatives. They're banning their books. I mean, I never thought I'd see the day where books would be banned from bookstores, and they're banning books about alternative treatments for autism and all kinds of conditions where the families are hopeless, right? That's what I learned about all this stuff going in through, because I'm pro-vaccine. I don't, we're not arguing vaccines, but there's books now that have helped people who have children with autism. And these people are hopeless. These parents have tried everything, and now they can't even get these books where maybe there's a glimmer of hope in them. That's very, very scary, and that's what people are facing if they have any kind of alternative beliefs about the world.
Well, this is why you guys need to share the shows you love, because we can't be found in iTunes and Spotify and stuff anymore. So it's up to the listeners to share the content and support the content, because the days of otherwise are gone.
It is Orwell's 1984, and we're right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
True that.
Scary, man. And Mike, I wanted to ask you, I mean, it's so funny, like when Trump started running, I was hearing these terms. I mean, I've been familiar with terms like deep state and quote unquote fake news. For me, fake news, it's been going on forever, but it goes back kind of it's kind of controlling a lot of media companies, similar to the smaller, fewer companies owning all these outlets now. How much do you think that plays in what we're talking about? Obviously it's still going on today. How much do you think that kind of operation of an Operation Mockingbird still persists today?
Well, for me, I knew the news was fake when there was the housing market crash of 2008, 2009, and everybody in the news who said there was no housing bubble and go buy a house, nobody got fired. There were no consequences. And that's when I just realized, okay, it's all fake, because you can't have real news unless people who are wrong face some kind of repercussions. And so for me, that was my big, because I was kind of just a normal, regular guy back then, right? Just living my life. And I just thought, how is it that all these people they weren't fired? How did Paul Krugman not get fired? How did nobody got in any kind of trouble at all? And then I realized, okay, it's all fake. And that's what got me looking into things more deeply.
Okay. Well, I mean, because it just seems to have played out, like we were talking earlier before you came on, from, weapons of mass destruction to Gulf of Tonkin to, I mean, it just, the use of the media to get us into things we had no business being in. It just, it just goes back a long time. And when I hear things like fake news now and deep state, I mean, it seems like, I guess it's cool. More public are getting hip to it, but it's been around for quite a while. Nothing new is under the sun, it appears.
Yeah, but none of us want to suffer from like been there, done that syndrome, and we should be glad that people are waking up. Is how I view it. Is
for sure.
It's kind of. I mean, the history it's probably all fake, bro. The history is probably fake. Probably everything is fake. And what does that mean? I don't know, but it means going forward we have to figure things out for ourselves. But there is bad in terms of, because the problem is if everything mainstream even taught is viewed as fake, then legitimately bad actors are going to be able to sneak through the cracks and get away with things that they couldn't get away with. And I think that's what nobody really is prepared to talk about in the media is, hey, like me personally, as Mike Cernovich, I would like to live in a world where if you're a really bad person and there's an article that shows that you're a really bad person, that most people would say, okay, that's a bad person. Let's kind of keep that person to the edge. But the media has lied about everyone pretty much. So now how do you tell who's good or bad? Well, you got to do your own homework, which is good. I mean, we should do that anyway, but you can't know everything, right? Your whole day would just be spent researching everything and not working and hanging out with your kids and everything else. We had outsourced things there was a contract, an implied contract of sorts where we had just said, okay, we're going to turn on the news or we're going to pick up the New York Times and you're going to tell us mostly the truth. You're not going to be right about everything, but you're going to try. And I'm going to live my life and I'm going to get caught up for half an hour a day, an hour a day, and I kind of know what's going on. And now you have to make finding the truth a full-time job. But let's face it, most people don't have that kind of time. So what we have now is a sort of nihilism where you just can't believe anything you see.
Well, I mean, look at the education system for an example. I mean, your book, Real Mindset, on entrepreneurism is an example. I mean, I often recommend Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, but I mean, this is the kind of shit that our kids should be learning in school. And I mean, if you look at Canada, for example, it's something like 8 out of 10 small businesses are started by immigrants or high school dropouts. And there's a real good reason for that. It's because, I talked to my Lebanese buddy and he's like, back home, we get taught that working for someone else is temporary. And the ultimate goal is to do your own thing. And it's like a high school dropout doesn't get that specialization. And they drill into you that you need to be specialized and you need a specialized skill. And you got to go to, well, you know what? Now those people are everywhere. So you can hire those people. And it's the people with the dream and the thinking that everything is possible and all that that's going to the wayside. And that's kind of something that we've been trying to shine a light on recently here in Grimerica is just back to that. You don't need to grind through a student loan and everything else these days. I mean, it's all in the shit you would have paid $100,000 for an education on say audio visual 5 years ago is now on fucking YouTube for free.
Right.
And it's actually worse than that because in America, not only are you not learning those skills, but culturally, if you tell people, hey, man, I'm going to, go to a Dale Carnegie seminar or something, people look like you have herpes or something. Like, what do you mean? Oh, you're into self-help or something. So not only are people not learning the skills that they need to learn, but if you try to better yourself, you get like ridiculed. People think you're some kind of they think self-help is like mocking people. But on the flip side, the good news is that if you actually aren't afraid to grind away, it eventually will pay off. It might take a while, but you'll get there.
Agree.
That's coming. I've always been self-employed, even with the networks I've worked at. I've been an independent contractor. I've never been an employee, and I learned that early on when I was, doing landscaping as a kid, pouring concrete when I was, I'd just come back from college and my mom was sick with heart problems and all that. I said, man, this is not cool. I do not dig working for other people. And, and the thing is, the incentive, though, you've got to remember what happens to the incentive with the, up there in Canada, you guys certainly understand the overtaxation and regulation that we get pounded with. I mean, I had my own businesses, gyms. I had to pay taxes and, payroll taxes, property taxes, you name it, man, retail tax. At some point, you lose the incentive to be an ass kicker because you see so many people living for free that you go, why should I be dragging your ass around and pushing you around in a cart when you're not doing anything? And that's exactly what happens to people. You just go, hey, man, because it got to a point, I remember when I first started fighting, I was driving a rusty old Cherokee pickup truck. The rear quarter panel of the bed fell off of it going down the road. It was that bad. It just fell off of it when I hit some railroad tracks. And I pulled up into a grocery store and I bought, whatever I had money for. I bought some groceries to, some chicken, some broccoli, some rice that I was living on. And a guy, buys nothing but at the time you could buy alcohol and he bought steaks and some other stuff and get a brand new car. And I was so furious at the time because I was in my early 20s and I was thinking, this is not cool. This is not cool at all, man.
Yeah, but in the long run, but that person was leveraged out. He leased all so the flip side too, though, is in the long run, that's the problem is in the short term, they look like they have it made, but there was a great term for that. There was an old website called The Dirty way back in the day. Nick Ritchie's The Dirty. Yeah. They called them, 30K millionaire. So they would, So that guy's levered up. And there's a difference between that because what the problem is with you.
Dirty.
Yeah. So if you have you have a good payday or something, you make 10 grand, 20 grand or more, and you set it aside, you still feel poor because you're still driving that old rusted out car or whatever. And you got to wait until you're 50, 60 years old. And that's when it pays off.
Right. But what I see it as was, and actually I saw it right away, was the double side of slavery that they've created out of the people like ourselves who are busting their tails, who have to pay for that stuff. And then the people who are receiving that, how much self-love can you have and how much self-worth can you feel when you don't earn anything? And it shows up in the mailbox every month, and you think that's a great way to completely destroy someone's self-love, everything, any kind of value system for anything ever earned or anything ever loved. It's a great way to just destroy that.
I mean, you have social welfare and you have corporate welfare in the tune of billions as well.
Which is corporate welfare is even more evil.
Well, I'm a status Indian, and I can tell you firsthand that it's not working with the Indians in Canada. Like, just giving my people money just doesn't pay off in the long run. They've lost, our suicide rates are, way the fuck higher than any place else or any other demographic. And I think that's got more to do with that lack of meaning, that lack of, A, your culture's been destroyed. B, you're kind of shut off from the outside world in a lot of cases, and C, you've got no
motivation to
motivation.
It's the destruction. It's the destruction of identity. The complete rape and destruction of identity.
Well, we've talked about before. It's incentivized. You know what I mean? And that's kind of almost the social engineering side of it, from my perspective. At least from the social side, dad's got to be out of the house, keep pumping out babies, we'll give you more money. And like we've talked about, from the timeline, 70s and 80s, your introduction of, crack, heroin, et cetera, the expansion of the prison system. It's this weird kind of, like I said, incentivization for, like Pat was saying, just not want to do shit necessarily, while it just corrodes and destroys families.
Yeah, that's a different conversation. I mean, there's with native populations, it's a little different. They, you decimated them. I mean, it's all trickling down now, unfortunately. That now the fatherless rate is something like 50% in America, something absurd. The number is so big that when you read it, you don't really believe it. You kind of like have to double check that. And then the government's kind of become a surrogate father. And as we're seeing, we're just seeing more crime, more opioid overdoses, more suicide. But then real issues like that don't get any kind of coverage by the media because they're the ones selling the drugs. They're the biggest drug dealers in the world.
Right.
Yeah, that's a huge one. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest epidemic is that effect that the fatherless generation, or it's not even the fatherless generation. It's more like a couple generations of people that don't know how to relate to each other properly. Because I mean, there's just as many marriages that are still together, but they're in some toxic, broken form because, we were never meant as a species, I don't think, to be able to compare with the entire planet. You were kind of comparing in your small little social group. So you've got that, and you've got all this other programming being crammed down your head, and you've got, it comes back to that education where they don't teach anything on entrepreneurship. I mean, in your 18 years high school and middle school, how much did they teach you on relating with other people and, communicating with other people? None of that. None of it.
Well, and certainly not teaching epigenetics, which when you read a book and I talked about it on a previous podcast called The Internal Matrix, which is an incredible book. It talks about epigenetics, where they took lab mice and they made a certain tone, a musical tone, a bell sound, and they electrified the bottom of the cage and shocked the mice's feet every time they heard that tone. 3 generations after that, the mice were terrified of that tone because it was imprinted on the mice for generations. And so you think about the stress factors of children being born into that, the stress factors, and the way it's taught, the stress factors that are affected by babies that are inside the mothers that are going through the stress and all of this type of stuff. It lasts for generations.
Yeah, it becomes part of your DNA. All the cortisol that your mom feels, the baby feels, and then everybody, it's actually crazy, dude. Everybody is, when I go out and I see kids, for example, I remember being like a little kid, and 5-year-old kids today, they seem to me like they're 3. The way they enter, like when I was, they're goo goo gaga, they're like baby talk and stuff. When we were 5, we were in kindergarten. We were having, like philosophical conversations, but we were people, right? We were little human beings.
I was making myself lunch when I was 5.
Yeah.
I was cooking stuff. I was cooking stuff when I was 5, standing on a chair.
My daughter cooked me some eggs this weekend.
That's great.
Well, that begs the larger question when people talk about the technocracy and the singularity, et cetera. How much has, now we're looking at 5G, how much has our phone entered into that creating that disconnect between human beings like you talked about? We don't know how to relate to each other. Don't call me, just text me. I mean, my mom was astounded when I called her the other day. I mean, it's like that's the phone, in my opinion, is a huge thing when it comes to that disconnect. And kids, I mean, they're born digital now, but still interact with other human beings.
Yeah, there's, too many things going on to trace it all back. Other than, I don't know, I just blame the media for everything, because it seems like every time you find every time you pull on a thread or something, it leads back to the media, where they were the ones who were saying, families are bad. They're the ones saying, a normal nuclear family is a bad thing and shouldn't be desired, and that if you're a woman and you want to stay home with your kids, the media is the one telling you that's like a bad thing. It isn't, right? That's why I always love. They're always like, oh, misogyny. It's the media telling women what they have to do. Oh no, how dare you not want it all, right? Which is absurd, really, to expect a woman to have a kids and a career and everything else. It's not even actually realistic for a man, woman, anybody. But the media has been the one pushing all that angle. So I don't want to blame everything on the media and scapegoating too much, but when you look at societal problems, you don't have to look too far to see advertisements for pharmaceuticals and the destruction of traditional marriage being a major goal of the media.
Well, and having, the women's rights movement and all that stuff, I support all of that. But at the same time, look, it comes down to who you can tax. You got to be, they couldn't tax half of the population.
Right, exactly.
So that's it's a monetary thing. The IRS needed its money, had to make sure they got their taxes. So, but let's go back to Hoax a little bit, Mike, and talk a little bit more about that. How can people find your movie to watch it?
Oh yeah, go to Hoax the movie, HOAXEDMOVIE.com, and check out the trailer. And if you like it, rent it or buy it. To the trailer, it's so good, dude. And I can say that because I didn't make it. I produced it and did all that kind of back end stuff. But the graphics, the VFX, the cinematography, that was all done by the directors. And I'm not someone who can hardly watch a film, because speaking of smartphones, like you were saying earlier, right? For me, a movie has to be more interesting than Twitter or more interesting than talking to you guys. And that's not usually going to happen. So Hoax is more interesting than the internet.
Yeah,
it really is.
It is. And go ahead.
Do we have time to get a quick update about your investigative work in Florida and the Epstein case and all that?
Yeah. I got a couple more minutes.
If you guys
that thing is weirder. Yeah, that gets weirder by the minute. So almost 3 years ago, I filed a lawsuit to unseal court records in a case involving Jeffrey Epstein. Should have been an easy win for me. And as you learn, when you are going after billionaire pedophiles, nothing is easy. And the judge ruled against me. I appealed it. And then, thank God, the Miami Herald came in and they wanted the same records. They sued. The judge denied them. So not only did the judge deny me, they denied the Miami Herald. And then the Miami Herald appealed. And then I was in the case with the Miami Herald. And both of us are trying to get the records. And it looks like the Court of Appeals is willing to side with us. But plot twist, the judge overseeing the case died. Now he's 96. He's 96. So I don't want you guys watering any, conspiracy theories in here, but I'll just say that that's weird, right? It's like a number of things happening. Like the judge died. Come on, man. This is like a bad Tom Clancy novel, but we should get a ruling pretty soon. And then, I don't know, I think they probably won't be able to find the documents. I think somebody will lose the padlock, or magically they'll say, oh, we couldn't find it. Because they literally keep this stuff under lock and key. We couldn't find
fire at the courthouse.
Yeah, exactly. There was a mysterious fire. Nobody knows what happened to these files.
Well, how have your views changed on conspiracy theories in the last 3 or 4 years? Because we've been sort of following you since pre-Trump, and it must have been a hell of a roller coaster ride for you. It's been an exciting couple of years. I'm sure years from 60 Minutes to everything else. It's like, how has your view changed? I mean, with your view being that on the media, I've got to think you're, if nothing else, it's watering you down a little bit.
Well, I become less of a conspiracy theorist, and I'll tell you why. I've met so many of these people that, because we're conditioned to think if somebody's on TV, they're an authority. That's part of like the brainwashing.
Yeah.
And I've met so many of them. These are not intelligent people. These are not people who are well-read, intellectual, curious, inquisitive. They're all just the same people. It's white privilege. They're rich kids who had a trust fund so that they could afford to take an unpaid internship to work at CNN. Because as you know, could you imagine, Pat, or, you guys, you're growing up in Canada, rural Canada, or Iowa, or, rural Illinois like me. Oh, yeah, I'll just go live in New York and pay $2,000 a month in rent and take an unpaid internship, right? So you're not going to actually get the best people at those places. You're only going to get the ones who have, parents who can subsidize all that. So it's less a conspiracy and more they're just all basic. They're not interesting people. They're not the kind of people you would want to hang out and talk to, that you would expect to have any sort of reflection or inquisitiveness or intellectual curiosity. They're just a bunch of idiots. Now, maybe the conspiracy.
Myself in a mixer with Anderson Cooper.
Yeah, Cooper wouldn't survive. He's not an intellectual. Ask Anderson Cooper what's the last book he read, right? He doesn't read books. Right. But maybe the conspiracy is that you only hire people. He's a Vanderbilt too. He's Exhibit A, just some trust fund kid, right? Well, that's not. He's some trust fund kid. Never had to work for anything in his entire life, and that's who the media holds up as an expert on everything in the world. So I just think they're all a bunch of idiots, easily manipulated, and that is less of a conspiracy and just more of they're responding to incentives, their paychecks, the big pharma checks, and everything else.
That's like Tucker too, right? Doesn't he have a trust fund as well?
He was old money Tyson Foods, I think. Either Swanson or one of those really, really big food factories. But of course, I like what Tucker says, so therefore I won't hold it against him that he's a trust fund kid, right? Isn't that the rules?
Well, all right. So if you have anything else to add, because we don't want to hold you too much longer, Mike. You've been pretty gracious with your time, buddy.
No, my pleasure. Always a pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right.
Come back anytime.
Yeah.
Everybody out there, go check out Hoax.
Hoaxmovie.com.
Yeah.
See ya.
Yeah. Thank you, brother.
Well, Pat, we got to get ready to dip as well. We have gentlemen for our other program.
Thank you.
Was attacked by a freaking grizzly bear protecting her cubs.
You got to get Jeffrey a new computer.
Yeah, thanks, guys. That was fun. That was very good. Yeah.
Thank you very much, guys. Hello to all the folks out there in Canada, and thanks for watching. And it's been awesome. We got to do this again soon, guys. More often than not.
All right, thanks.
Right on, guys. Thanks for everything.
Take care, gang.
Ciao.
See ya.
Adios.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning into the live show. We'll catch you guys next Wednesday, I guess. Only in 2 days.
This Wednesday.
We'll be back in 2 days. Later, Pat.
Bye, guys.
See ya.